Hey everyone. So in this video I'd like to talk about division and zero. So we've already explored how we can put positive numbers and negative numbers together, but we haven't talked about how zero interacts with different numbers through the different operations. And I'm sure you're familiar with most. For example, if I take -7 and I add 0 to it, well, this is going to give us -7 still. Right? 0 added onto any number it's not really going to do anything. And this is the same with subtraction by 0, right? 4 minus 0, this is still 4. What if we multiply by 0, right? 11 times 0, well, anything times 0 is 0. So I'm sure these are the ones you're familiar with. When it comes to division involving 0, this is where I encounter students might not be as familiar. And so if I take 8 and I divide by 0, what do we get? Or if I take something like 0 and I divide it by 5, what do we get? And this is what I want to talk about in today's video. So here let's start by doing division that we're familiar with. Maybe let's say 30 divided by 10. Right, 30 divided by 10, we know that this is 3 because 10 goes into 33 times. And we can also see this as if I take 10, how many times do I need to add it to itself before I get 30? Well, I needed to add it to itself 3 times. That's exactly where this 3 comes from. Right. Similarly, if I take, let's say, the number 24 and I divide this by 6, well, this is like saying this is equal to 4. Since if I take 6 and I add it to itself 4 times, that's when I get 24, right? So here I would need to add 6 to itself 4 times to get 24. That's exactly where that result from our division comes from. Well, what if we do the same thing with this number 8, right? What if I ask, what do we get when we take 8 and divide that by 0? Right, so here this is like saying, if I add 0 onto itself, if I add that denominator to itself, how many times do I need to add until I get my numerator, 8. Well, this might seem a little bit confusing because no matter how many times I add 0 to itself, we're never going to get the number 8. 0 is never going to contribute anything more to bring us closer to the number 8. There's no reasonable answer. Right, it's not 0. I don't need to add 0 times to get 8. There's just no number that makes sense to put here to tell us how many times we add 0 to itself to get 8. And so actually what we say when we evaluate 8 divided by 0 is we say this is undefined. There's just no reasonable answer. Again, I want to emphasize that here we're taking 8, dividing it by 0. The result is not 0. It's just undefined. There's no reasonable answer. And sometimes people like to view division in terms of multiplication to see the same result, right? So earlier we said 30 divided by 10, this is equal to 3. And you can kind of see this as the fact that 10 times 3, right? This 3 is the same 3, is equal to 30, right? It's just a change in perspective, right? Or if I take 24, and here, what did we do earlier? We divided by 6, right? 24 divided by, oops, sorry about that. 24 divided by 6, this is equal to 4, right? And so this is like saying 6 times 4 is equal to 24. And so if we try to do the same sort of translation with our division that we just learned, right? 8 divided by 0. How would this translate into multiplication? Let's say we didn't know what this was. We wanted to use this kind of translation to reason through what 8 divided by 0 ought to be. Well, this is like saying 0 times what number is going to give us 8. Right, see, earlier we had 10, our denominator, divided by this result, gave us, or multiplied by that result, gave us our numerator 30. Here if we take 0 multiplied with this result, it should give us our numerator 8. And so, what number belongs here? What number times 0 is going to give us 8? Well, there's no reasonable answer. Any number times 0 is going to be 0, and so we can't possibly get 8. So this is another way of seeing that there's no reasonable answer to put here, and so there's no reasonable answer for this division. And so in general, any number divided by 0 is undefined. The result is undefined. So what about dividing 0 by another number? So, we've looked at examples where we have 0 in the denominator. What if we have examples where we have 0 in the numerator? What does that come out to be? Well, here again, let's reason ourselves through this by using familiar examples, right? If I take, let's say, 15 and I divide this by 3, right, we know this is equal to 5. And how can we sort of, tell a story that'll really justify this computation? Well, here I can think of 15 divided by 3 as saying, well, I have 15 people. There are 15 people that I'm splitting into 3 different groups. Right, so here, let's say we're splitting 15 into 3 groups. Right, that's what division is dividing things up. And here, if we split 15 into 3 different groups, this is like saying, the result being 5 is like saying how many people are in each group. Right, there are 5 people. In each group. I have 15 people, I split them up into 3 different groups. Well, each group is going to have 5 people if I split them up evenly amongst the 3 groups. And similarly, if I have 24 over 6, right, if I split 24 up into 6 groups, 24 people into 6 different groups, each group will have 4 people. Well, what if I take 0 people and I split them up amongst 5 groups? How many people will be in each of those 5 groups? Well, there's nobody to be in each group. There's nobody in any of the groups. There's no people I'm splitting up across 5 groups. There's no one that's going to be in each group. Right. Similarly, I can kind of think about this in terms of money. Let's say this was, my first example was a scenario where I had $15 and I'm splitting that $15 across 3 different people. How much money does each person get? Each person gets $5 if I'm splitting it up evenly. Let's say I have $24 and I split this up evenly across 6 people. Well, the way to do that is to give everyone $4. And if I have $0 and I'm splitting this up amongst 5 people, well, I'm not going to create money out of nowhere. Each person gets $0. And so in general, if we take 0 and we divide this by any number, actually maybe let me add a little special note here, divide this by any non-zero number. Well, the result is 0. So here I have this special statement where we're dividing by any non-zero number. Well, if we divide by 0, we know that the result is undefined, as we stated earlier, right, in our previous kinds of problems. If we take any number divided by 0, the result is undefined. And so here I'm just saying, well, if we have 0 and we divide this by any number, just as long as it's not 0, the result is 0. Right, so here maybe just to illustrate some examples here, if I take 0 and I divide this by negative 27, this is 0. If I have 0 in my numerator here and I divide this by 19, this is also 0. But I guess what I'm saying with this underlined statement in pink is that if I take 0 and I divide this by 0, well, division by 0 This is undefined.